The sun burned over the Virginia fields like a weight no man could lift. Rows of tobacco stretched endlessly under the heat, and the air smelled of wet earth and sweat. It was 1703, and on the Ashford plantation, nothing moved without permission. Not the wind, not the workers, not even hope. Elias had been brought there 3 months ago. They said he came from a ship out of Charleston, though no one knew his real origin. Some whispered he had Spanish blood. Others said French. What no one could deny were his eyes, pale blue, sharp as broken glass, impossible to ignore. In a world where most slaves kept their gaze down, Elias looked straight ahead. Not with defiance, with something quieter, something that unnerved the overseers. He worked the tobacco rows from dawn until his hands bled. He never complained, never spoke unless spoken to, but every man who worked beside him felt it. Elias was different. He carried himself like someone who had once been free, like someone who remembered what that felt like. The plantation belonged to Nathaniel Ashford, a man whose wealth came from soil and suffering. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and cold in a way that made even his allies uneasy. He had inherited the land from his father and expanded it with ruthless efficiency. He married Helena Winters 2 years ago, a union arranged between families, sealed with contracts and dowries, not love. Helena was 23, pale skin, dark hair always pinned tight, a face that rarely smiled. She had been raised to be ornamental, to host dinners, embroider linens, and produce heirs. She had done none of those things yet. Her marriage was a performance she had learned to survive, not live. She spent most days in the main house, a colonial manor with white columns and shuttered windows that kept the heat out and the world at bay. She read books her husband never touched. She walked the garden paths alone. She existed in the spaces between duty and silence. It was on one of those walks that she first saw him. Elias was repairing a fence near the edge of the tobacco field. His shirt clung to his back, soaked through with sweat. His hands moved with precision, hammering posts into the ground with a rhythm that seemed almost meditative. Helena had walked past dozens of slaves before. She had trained herself not to see them, not because she was cruel, but because seeing them hurt too much. But when Elias glanced up, just for a second, their eyes met, and Helena froze. She had never seen eyes like that, not on a slave, not on anyone. They were the color of winter sky, pale and piercing, and they held something she couldn't name. Not anger, not submission, something else, something that made her heart stutter in her chest. Elias looked away first. He returned to his work as if nothing had happened, but Helena stood there for 3 full breaths before she forced herself to keep walking. That night, she couldn't sleep. She told herself it was the heat, the humidity, the way the house felt like a cage. But when she closed her eyes, all she saw were those blue eyes staring back at her. Nathaniel noticed nothing. He came to bed late, smelling of whiskey and cigars, and fell asleep without a word. Helena lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, wondering why a single glance from a stranger had shaken her so deeply. The next morning, she walked the garden again. She told herself it was routine, but her steps took her closer to the fields than usual, closer to where the fence was being repaired. Elias was there, working alone this time. His movements were slow, deliberate, like someone who had learned to conserve energy over years of hard labor. Helena watched him from behind a row of hedges, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't understand. And then he looked up again. This time, he didn't look away. Neither did she. It lasted only a moment. But in that moment, something passed between them, something unspoken, forbidden, and undeniable. Helena turned and walked back to the house, her hands trembling. She didn't know it yet, but that second glance had changed everything. Because some connections don't ask for permission. They don't care about laws, or skin, or the world's cruelty. They simply exist, quiet, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. And on the Ashford plantation, where silence was survival and love was a crime, that connection had just been born. If you want to discover what happens next, don't forget to like and follow the channel so you don't miss the upcoming chapters. 3 weeks passed before they spoke. Helena tried to convince herself it was nothing, a trick of the light, a moment of curiosity. But every time she walked the garden, her eyes searched for him, and every time he worked near the house, he felt her presence before he saw her. It was a dangerous game, and they both knew it. Slaves who looked too long at white women were whipped, or worse, and women like Helena, women trapped in loveless marriages, women who dared to feel anything beyond duty, had no freedom at all. Her body belonged to her husband. Her choices belonged to society. Her desires were meant to be buried so deep they suffocated. But desire doesn't suffocate easily. One afternoon, Helena was cutting roses near the edge of the garden. The sun was low, the air thick with the smell of magnolia and damp earth. She heard footsteps behind her and turned. Elias stood a few feet away, a wooden bucket in his hands. He had been sent to draw water from the well. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, and there was a fresh bruise along his jaw, a reminder from the overseer that morning for working too slowly. Helena's breath caught. She had seen bruises before. She had learned to ignore them. But this one made her chest tighten with something sharper than pity. "Ma'am," Elias said quietly, lowering his gaze. It was the first time she had heard his voice. Deep, steady, almost gentle. "You're hurt," she said before she could stop herself. Elias hesitated. Slaves weren't supposed to respond to sympathy. It made things worse. But something in her tone, something genuine, made him lift his eyes again. "It's nothing, ma'am." "It doesn't look like nothing." A silence stretched between them, the kind that felt too heavy to break. "I've had worse," Elias said finally. Helena's hands tightened around the roses. Thorns pressed into her palms, but she didn't let go. "You shouldn't have to," she whispered. Elias stared at her. No white woman had ever said anything like that to him, not in his entire life. He didn't know how to respond, so he just nodded once, slowly, and turned to leave. "Wait," Helena said. He stopped, didn't turn around, just stood there, waiting. Helena stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the sweat and soil on him, close enough that if anyone saw them, it would be over. "What's your name?" she asked. "Elias." "Elias," she repeated, as if testing the weight of it. I know who you are, ma'am." Of course he did. Everyone on the plantation knew who she was. The lady of the house, the wife of the man who owned them all. "Then you know I can't..." She trailed off, not sure what she was trying to say. Elias finally turned to face her. His blue eyes were calm, but there was something burning underneath. Something that matched the fire she felt rising in her own chest. "I know," he said quietly. "But you asked anyway." Helena's heart pounded. She didn't know what she had expected, but it wasn't this clarity, this quiet defiance. "Why are your eyes that color?" she asked, the question spilling out before she could stop it. Elias almost smiled. Almost. "My mother's father was Irish. That's what they told me, before they sold him south. And your mother? Dead. Long time ago." Helena felt something crack open inside her. She had spent years numbing herself to other people's pain. But standing here, looking at this man who had survived things she couldn't imagine, she felt every wall she had built start to crumble. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be," Elias replied. "Sorrow doesn't change anything." He was right, and somehow that made it worse. Footsteps echoed from the main house. Someone was coming. Elias turned without another word and walked toward the well, his movements calm, unhurried, as if nothing had happened. Helena stood there, roses still clutched in her hands, thorns cutting deeper into her skin. That night she couldn't eat. Nathaniel asked if she was ill. She said yes. He didn't press further. He never did. But lying in bed later, staring at the darkness, Helena realized something terrifying. She had just crossed a line she could never uncross, and she wanted to cross it again. If this story is pulling you in, go ahead and like it and follow the channel so you don't miss any part of this journey. Helena started leaving notes. It was reckless, insane, the kind of thing that could get them both killed. But she couldn't stop herself. The first note was simple, just a folded piece of paper tucked beneath a loose stone near the well. She didn't sign it, didn't write much. Just 3 words. Are you safe? The next morning, the note was gone. 2 days later, she found a response in the same spot, written in careful, surprisingly elegant handwriting. Safe as I can be. Helena's hands shook as she read it. Elias could write. That meant he had been taught, or had taught himself. Either way, it was dangerous. Literate slaves were considered threats. If anyone found out, he would be punished. Severely, but he had answered her anyway. She wrote again. This time she asked a question she'd been turning over in her mind for weeks. Do you ever think about running? His response came faster this time. Every day. But running means dying slow or dying fast. Either way, you die. Helena felt tears prick her eyes. She didn't cry often. She had trained herself out of it. But reading those words written by a man who had accepted his own death as inevitable, broke something inside her. She wrote back, "What if you didn't have to die?" This time there was no response for 3 days. Helena checked the stone every morning, her heart racing, terrified that someone had found the notes, terrified that Elias had been caught, terrified that she had pushed too far. But on the 4th day, a new note appeared. What are you really asking me? Helena sat down on the garden bench, the paper trembling in her hands. She didn't know what she was asking. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have answers. All she had was a desperate, irrational hope that somehow, somewhere, there was a way out of this. She wrote back, "I'm asking if you believe in impossible things." His next response was the longest yet. "I used to. When I was young, before they taught me what the world really is. But then I met someone who makes me remember what hope felt like, and that's the most dangerous thing of all." Helena read the words over and over until she had them memorized. He was talking about her. She knew it. And knowing it made her chest ache with a longing so fierce it felt like drowning. That night, Nathaniel came to her bed. It was a duty, not desire. He touched her with the same cold efficiency he used to manage his plantation. When it was over, he rolled away and fell asleep. Helena lay there, silent tears sliding down her face, thinking about blue eyes and impossible hope. The next morning, she wrote one more note. "Meet me, tonight, the old barn past the south field, after midnight." She left it under the stone and walked away before she could change her mind. She didn't know if he would come. She didn't know what would happen if he did. All she knew was that she couldn't keep living like this, trapped between a life that suffocated her and a connection that could destroy her. Midnight came slowly. Helena waited until Nathaniel's breathing turned deep and steady. Then she slipped out of bed, pulled a shawl over her nightgown, and crept through the house like a ghost. The barn was a 15-minute walk through dark fields. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every sound made her heart stop, but she kept walking. When she reached the barn, she stood outside for a long moment, listening. Crickets, wind, nothing else. She stepped inside. The smell of old hay and wood filled the air. Moonlight slipped through cracks in the walls, casting pale lines across the floor. And there, standing in the shadows, was Elias. He didn't say anything. Neither did she. They just looked at each other. Two people who had no right to be there, no future beyond this moment, no hope except the dangerous, reckless thing growing between them. Helena stepped closer, close enough to see the way his chest rose and fell, close enough to feel the heat radiating off his skin. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "Neither do I," Elias said. "This is wrong. I know we could both die for this, I know." Helena's hand trembled as she reached out. Her fingers brushed against his, just that, just a touch, but it felt like lightning. Elias closed his hand around hers. His grip was firm, careful, like he was holding something fragile and precious. "Tell me to leave," he said quietly. "Tell me this is madness, and I'll walk away. I'll never come back." Helena looked up at him, at those impossible blue eyes that had haunted her since the first moment she saw them. "I can't," she whispered. And then, for the first time in her life, Helena kissed someone because she wanted to, not because it was expected, not because it was duty, but because every part of her was screaming for this man, this moment, this impossible, forbidden thing. Elias kissed her back like he was memorizing her, like he knew this might be the only time, like he was trying to fit a lifetime of longing into one stolen breath. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were shaking. "What happens now?" Helena asked. Elias looked at her with an expression that was equal parts sorrow and hope. "I don't know," he said, "but whatever it is, it'll be worth it. And if you want to keep discovering what happens, follow the channel now. Every chapter brings new revelations." They met 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Each time was more dangerous than the last. Each time they stayed longer, talked more, touched more, fell deeper into something they both knew had no future. Helena learned things about Elias she never expected. He'd been born in Maryland. His mother had sung to him in a language she said was Wolof, though she never taught him the words. His father had been sold when Elias was 5. He had one memory of him, strong hands lifting him into the air, laughter, sunlight, then nothing. Elias had been sold 4 times by the time he was 20. Each time, he had survived by being smart, quiet, and impossibly resilient. He had learned to read by watching a plantation owner's son practice his letters. He had memorized poems he heard recited at dinner parties. He had built a whole interior world that no one could take from him. "I used to think I was waiting for something," he told Helena one night in the barn. "Freedom, maybe, or death. But now I think I was waiting for you." Helena's heart broke and mended at the same time. She told him about her own prison. The way her father had sold her into marriage like livestock. The way Nathaniel looked at her like she was property, not a person. The way she had spent years disappearing into books because reality was unbearable. "I used to think I was dead inside," she whispered, "but you made me feel alive again." They held each other in the darkness, 2 people who had found something beautiful in a world built to destroy it. But beauty doesn't last long when the world is watching. It was a field hand named Moses who noticed first. He saw Helena walking toward the south field one night, saw the way she glanced over her shoulder, saw the direction she was headed. Moses was older, careful, and smart enough to know that some secrets were too dangerous to keep. He didn't tell the overseer. He told Elias, "You need to stop," Moses said quietly, cornering Elias near the tobacco rows one morning. "Whatever you're doing with that woman, you need to stop." Elias went still. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, boy. I've been a slave for 40 years. I know what forbidden looks like, and you're wearing it all over your face." Elias clenched his jaw. "It's not what you think. It doesn't matter what it is. If Ashford finds out, he'll kill you, slow, in front of everyone. And her, she'll be ruined, or worse." Elias knew Moses was right. He knew every word was true, but knowing didn't change anything. "I can't stop," he said quietly. Moses stared at him for a long moment. Then he shook his head, sadness in his eyes. "Then you're a dead man," he said, "and you're taking her with you." That night, Elias tried to end it. He went to the barn and waited for Helena. When she arrived, breathless and smiling, he forced himself to say the words, "We can't do this anymore." Helena's smile vanished. "What? It's too dangerous. Someone's going to notice. Someone probably already has." "I don't care." "You should." "Elias, no." His voice was firm, but his eyes were pleading. "If they catch us, they'll kill me, and they'll destroy you. I won't let that happen." Helena stepped closer, her hands reaching for his face. "Then we'll run." Elias stared at her. "What?" "We'll run. Together. We'll go north. I have jewelry. I can sell it. We'll find a way." "Helena, that's insane. They'll hunt us down. I don't care." Her voice cracked. "I don't care if it's insane. I don't care if it's impossible. I would rather die free with you than live one more day in that house pretending I'm not dying inside." Elias felt something break open in his chest. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, and held her like she was the only real thing in the world. "If we do this," he whispered, "there's no going back. I know. We'll be hunted for the rest of our lives. I know. We might not make it." Helena pulled back just enough to look at him. Her eyes were bright with tears, but her voice was steady. "Then at least we'll have tried." They made a plan. 2 weeks. Helena would gather what she could without raising suspicion. Elias would scout routes, find contacts among other slaves who had heard whispers of the underground network. They would leave on a moonless night, travel only in darkness, and pray they made it to Pennsylvania before the dogs caught their scent. It was desperate. It was reckless. It was the only thing that felt true. But plans built on secrets rarely survive the light. 3 days before they were supposed to run, Nathaniel came home early from a trip to Richmond. He walked into the house and found Helena packing a small bag in her room. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his voice cold. Helena froze. Her mind raced, searching for a lie. But Nathaniel's eyes were already on the jewelry she had wrapped in cloth, the coins she had stolen from his desk, the map she had hidden beneath her dress. "Who is he?" Nathaniel asked quietly. Helena's blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you—" Nathaniel crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed her by the throat, not hard enough to choke, just hard enough to make his point. "Don't lie to me," he hissed. "I'm not a fool, Helena. I've seen the way you look at the fields, the way you disappear at night. So I'll ask you again, who is he?" Helena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. And then she made a choice. She looked him in the eye and said nothing. Nathaniel's face twisted with rage. He threw her to the floor and stormed out of the room, shouting for the overseer. Helena scrambled to her feet and ran. She ran through the house, out the back door, across the fields. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to warn Elias. She found him near the tobacco rows, working with Moses. The moment he saw her face, he knew. "They know," she gasped. "Nathaniel knows. You have to run. Now." Elias looked at Moses. Moses looked back, grim understanding passing between them. "Go," Moses said. "Both of you. I'll buy you time." Elias grabbed Helena's hand and ran. Behind them, dogs began to bark. If you're curious about the outcome of this story, don't forget to like and turn on the channel's notification bell so you can follow the final chapter. They ran until their lungs burned and their legs gave out. Through tobacco fields and pine forests, across creeks and over fences, with the sound of dogs and men growing louder behind them. Helena's dress tore on branches. Elias's shoulder bled from a fall, but they didn't stop. By dawn, they had made it to the edge of the plantation, into the thick woods that bordered the Ashford land. They collapsed beneath a fallen oak, gasping for air, listening for the sounds of pursuit. The dogs had lost the scent at the creek, for now. "We can't stay here," Elias said, his voice hoarse. "They'll bring more men, more dogs. We need to keep moving." Helena nodded, too exhausted to speak. Her hands were blistered, her feet were bleeding. But when Elias helped her to her feet, she didn't hesitate. They walked through the woods for 3 days, moving only at night, hiding during the day. Elias knew the land from years of working it. He found water, found roots and berries, kept them alive when Helena thought she couldn't take another step. On the 4th night, they reached a small cabin deep in the forest. Elias knocked 3 times, paused, then knocked twice more. The door opened. An older black woman stood there, her eyes sharp and cautious. "Moses sent you?" she asked. Elias nodded. The woman studied them for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Get in. Quick." Inside, the cabin was small but warm. The woman's name was Ruth. She was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, one of the invisible network of people who helped runaway slaves reach freedom. "You've got a long road ahead," Ruth said, handing them bread and water. "Pennsylvania's 200 miles north, and they'll be looking for you the whole way." "We'll make it," Elias said. Ruth looked at Helena. "You sure about this, girl? Once you cross that line with him, there's no coming back. Your family will disown you. Society will spit on you. You'll be an outcast for the rest of your life." Helena met her gaze without flinching. "I'm already an outcast. I just didn't know it until I met him." Ruth smiled faintly. "All right then, I'll get you to the next station. But after that, you're on your own." They traveled for 6 more weeks, through forests and swamps, hidden in the backs of wagons, smuggled across rivers in the dead of night. They slept in barns and basements, and once, memorably, in a church crypt. Helena's hands grew calloused, her skin tanned from the sun. She learned to move silently, to read the signs Ruth had taught them, to trust her instincts. And through it all, Elias was beside her, teaching her, protecting her, loving her in a way that felt like the first honest thing either of them had ever known. They crossed into Pennsylvania on a cold October morning. The trees were gold and red, and the air smelled like wood smoke and freedom. They stood at the state line for a long time, holding hands, unable to quite believe they had made it. "We're free," Helena whispered. Elias nodded slowly. "We're free." But freedom, they would learn, was more complicated than crossing a border. They settled in a small town outside Philadelphia, where mixed couples were rare but not unheard of. Elias found work as a carpenter. Helena took in sewing. They lived in a tiny house with a leaking roof and drafty windows, and it was the happiest either of them had ever been. But the past didn't let go easily. Nathaniel put a bounty on Elias, $500 for his capture. Slave catchers came north, sniffing around, asking questions. Twice, Elias and Helena had to pack everything and move in the middle of the night, and there were other costs. Helena's family disowned her. Former friends crossed the street to avoid her. Shopkeepers refused to serve them. Children threw rocks at their house. But every night they lay in bed together, and Helena would trace the scars on Elias's back, scars from a life he had survived, and whisper, "I would do it all again." And Elias would kiss her forehead and say, "So would I." Years passed. The world shifted around them. The abolitionist movement grew louder. Tensions between North and South deepened. Whispers of war began to spread. But Elias and Helena built a life, small, quiet, free. They never had children. Helena's body, worn down by years of stress and hardship, couldn't carry a child to term. It was a sorrow they carried together, but it didn't break them. Instead, they opened their home to runaways, became part of the railroad themselves. Fed, sheltered and guided dozens of people on their journey north, and every person who passed through their door saw the same thing. Two people who had risked everything for love and won. In 1863, when President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, Elias and Helena stood in the town square and listened to the announcement. Elias, now 53, with silver in his hair and deep lines around his blue eyes, turned to Helena. "We did it," he said quietly. "We lived long enough to see it." Helena, her own hair now streaked with gray, smiled through her tears. "We did." They lived another 20 years together. Long enough to see the end of the war, long enough to see black men vote, long enough to watch the world change, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. And when Elias died in 1883, peacefully in his sleep, Helena held his hand and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me what it means to be free." She buried him in the small cemetery outside town, beneath an oak tree that reminded her of the one they had hidden under all those years ago. And on his headstone, she had carved, Elias, a free man, a good man, beloved. Helena lived 3 more years. When she died, she was buried beside him, and on her headstone, in letters just as bold, it read, Helena, a free woman, a brave woman, beloved. 2 graves, side by side. A testament to a love that had defied every law, every rule, every cruelty the world could throw at it. And in the end, it was love that won. If this story moved you, leave your like and follow the channel for more incredible stories of courage, mystery, and hidden secrets that only here you'll find.